Hey guys, Dan here with Tim over Zoom. Hello, Tim.
Hi, everybody.
It's time once again for Dan Does Disney, and this is a very odd movie we're going to be talking about because it's not really a movie. It was turned into a movie. So this is Davy Crockett and the King of, or Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. It's from 1955, and as usual, I'll talk a little bit about the background. There isn't too much really that I could find on this, other than kind of the background of making it from the TV into the movies. But basically, this takes three episodes of the Disneyland television series and turns it into a full color theatrical film. Really, just a few months after they premiered the episode. So they had, now Tim, you are a big frequenter of the amusement park.
Yeah.
So did you know that the reason that we have Tomorrowland and Frontierland and all of that is because the Disneyland show was set up originally in those different chunks?
I wasn't aware of that. No.
Yeah. So basically, and we'll talk a little bit more later about the DVD releases of this, but the DVD release I have of this actually has the full episodes of the Disneyland show on it. So you get the Walt intro and all the other stuff. But basically, the show was kind of a front to fund making the amusement park, but each week was a different theme. So you'd have, Tomorrowland was one of the themes, and that's when he would show more, I don't know, futuristic based movies. And then Frontierland was one of them. So all of the Davy Crockett movies, these were spread out about a month apart, and each one was from the Frontierland logo of the series. And I guess they rotated maybe one every week, because there was four different, like Adventureland was one, Frontierland. So each week, I guess maybe they rotated in and out.
Yeah. So,
but so it's
did you watch just the three episodes back to back to back?
You know what I decided? No, here's what I decided to do. So, knowing that these were this movie is the edited versions of the episodes, because the movie itself is only 92 minutes. The episodes were
about
50, they were like 53 minutes or so, but then that includes the intro, the Walt narration, and then there's like a little outro where he plays a clip of here's what's coming next week. So I would say each one's maybe 47 minutes or so. But no, what I did was I watched the intros, and I watched Leonard Maltin is the host of all these DVDs on the Disney Treasure collection. So I watched the Maltin intros to see if maybe there was any little nuggets there of background. And then I watched the movie as it is now presented on Disney Plus. Because really, these Disney Treasures DVDs have been out of print for 15 years. So I think anybody watching our review is going to be watching it from Disney Plus.
Okay.
So, and I if I had more time, I would have maybe watched both and just kind of compared and contrasted what got cut out. But yeah, so I watched the intros, but I watched the exact same movie that you watched.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first one was Davy Crockett, Indian Fighter, that aired in December of '54. And this show just started in mid-October of '54. So this was maybe like the sixth or seventh episode they ran. And then January '55, they had Davy Crockett Goes to Congress. And then February '55, Davy Crockett at the Alamo. And then this movie was put together and released in May of that same year. And then we'll talk later about, in a different video, we'll talk about the second Davy Crockett movie that was made up from the other two in the miniseries. And they aired in late 1955. So 55 was like the Davy Crockett era.
Yeah.
And you and I probably both know the Davy Crockett song the best from Back to the Future.
Yeah.
That's certainly where I know it from. So for him to go back to November of 1955, I mean, that is, perfect timing for the Davy Crockett craze. We'll talk a little bit about the merchandising, but what is interesting about this movie is, so not only was it, cobbled together from the miniseries, and not even the complete miniseries, they cut out like 10 to 15 minutes of each one, but it still made over $2 million at the box office, even though over half the country watched it for free on television. And I can't think of another example really of like recently we've had the How to Train Your Dragon show, or I guess it became a show after the first movie, but then they released all the other movies and all right, well you can see these for free, but at least it's different content. Like, can you think of anything, even in recent years, that just plays the same thing as a movie?
I mean, they would have those Fathom events that we would do where they would
Yeah, like Game of Thrones.
I don't think we ever did it for Game of Thrones, but they would have it where like right before the premiere of like the second season, they would have like the finale or like or something like right before that when we were working.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I can think of.
And those, like you said, are more like special events, not
and
regularly released
the only one that comes to mind is right before the animated Star Wars Clone Wars came out. They had like a movie that premiered in theaters, and it was basically the first hour-long episode of the show that was going to be. So,
that's interesting. Okay, but it premiered in theaters before the show.
Yes.
Okay, so sort of the opposite of this. Okay, that is interesting. I knew there was a Clone Wars movie, but I thought it was something original.
Yeah, it was just the premiere of the show. But the thing is, I feel like Disney hoodwinked everybody because I don't think it was
marketing didn't seem to indicate
that it was going to be just the rehash of the TV shows. It was like Davy Crockett was such a big thing, and then they're like, oh, a Davy Crockett movie, and they went and it was just the edited version, and they didn't know. Like,
yeah, I did read that too. That was, they didn't know for sure, but they were like, likely one of the reasons was because of this. Another one was that it was in color, which at the time the show wasn't in color. I guess color TVs existed, but the show was not broadcast in color. Although it's interesting because on the DVD I have with the shows, the intro's in black and white and stuff, but then once they get to the movie portion, it is in color. And they rebroadcast it when NBC took over Disneyland in the early 60s. They rebroadcasted the 3 episodes in color at that time. So I guess they were filmed in color, obviously, and then just, the show wasn't available in color yet. But anyway, so the marketing for this thing, I'm sure you read a little bit about that, Tim.
The only thing I read was what we just discussed, that it was edited to be a movie and people didn't really know.
Okay, well, no, I meant the marketing more of the items, the merchandising, I should say.
Oh, the fact that it was the Navy craze, and like everybody had a coonskin hat. Like,
yes,
Lorraine's kid brother has a coonskin hat in Back to the Future.
Yes, actually, that's boy, I didn't think of that. You're right. The guy that played Wayne on Wonder Years.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Leonard Maltin, one of his intros, because he does a separate intro for each of the 3 episodes, and in one of them he was just like, "Yep, I was one of those kids with a coonskin cap. Like, that was, if you were nothing in school if you didn't have a coonskin cap if you were a boy."
I mean, I owned a coonskin hat as a kid, but I think that was just because my dad was alive during that could
be.
So
yeah, I'd love to talk to my parents. I mean, my parents would have been, my mom would have been really young. She would have been maybe 3, but my dad would have been 5. I wonder if he went to these movies. I'll have to ask him. I'm going to see them this weekend. Because I feel like your parents are about the same age as mine. Mine are around 70. My dad just turned 70 this year.
My dad's a little bit older than that, but
okay.
So I mean, it wasn't his coonskin hat. Like, I'm pretty sure we went somewhere on vacation and we did some type of frontier thing, and maybe it was even from Disney World. I don't even remember where we got the coonskin hat, but I had one growing up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I believe it. So in 1955, just within the first 8 months of this big craze, there were $300 million in Crockett merchandise sold. And I'm guessing, I don't know if that money went to Disney. I didn't read specifically that it was Disney specific merchandise, but I mean, I guess anybody could make a coonskin hat.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But maybe the likeness of Fess Parker specifically on like a lunchbox or something. But 10 million coonskin caps were sold. But by the early 2000s. So it was 300 million that those first 10 months. By the early 2000s, so about 45 years, it had sold $2 billion in merchandise. So obviously the craze died down a little bit, but like you said, when you were a kid, you know, you got a coon skin cap, so people were still doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, very very impressive, I guess, and obviously that's why they decided to make the prequels that we'll talk about, I guess, in a few weeks. I think it's not coming up right away, but maybe in another 4 or 5 movies.
So I think it might be
They
3.
have 1, 2. Okay, so yeah, Joe and I will do Lady and the Tramp, and then you and I have a new nature one, and then Littlest Outlaw, Great Locomotive, and then Davy Crockett. So
Oh, yeah.
there you go. All right, so that's pretty much all I have in terms of background. Like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about the DVD. There is, so this is the DVD I have is a 3 DVD set. The first one is the first 3 episodes that make up this movie. The second one is the other 2 episodes. Disc 3 apparently is a couple of bonus features, including a Leonard Maltin interview with Fess Parker. That stuff I didn't watch because I'm going to actually save that until we talk about the movie again, because I feel like we'll probably less to talk about the second time around
Yeah.
with the Crockett stuff. So we'll save that till later. But why don't we hear from you now about the different plots of the film?
Okay, well, the simple synopsis of this movie is the legends and myths from the life of famed American frontiersman Davy Crockett, played by Fess Parker, are depicted. First, as Crockett and his friend George Russell, played by Buddy Epson, fight in the Creek War, which is part of the War of 1812 and the American Indian War. I think it's considered to be part of both.
Okay.
Then Davy is then elected to Congress while he brings his unrefined ways to the House of Representatives. And then finally, Crockett and Russell journey to Texas and partake in the last stand at the Alamo. So those are
what happens.
Those are the 3 sections. And the timeline of this is crazy. Because, I mean, the Creek War ended in 1814, which is roughly when that episode takes place, because it kind of ends.
Right.
And then Davy Crockett is a real person, by the way, if you don't know that he's a real person.
Yeah, I actually wasn't sure. I did have to look it up because I wasn't sure if it was like Paul Bunyan or something where it was just like a made up person, but
oh, he's a real person, and then he just has a lot of myths and legends that maybe kind of make him a little kind of tall tale-ish as well. But in 1827, he was elected to Congress the first time, and he served 2 different terms. He lost the election, and then he won another election. So he was out of office the last time in 1835.
I never heard that, by the way.
What?
I never heard that he was like in Congress. Like I knew about
that was one thing that I didn't know about David.
Yeah, that was definitely news to me.
Let him know that he had he lost multiple elections to get to Congress, and then was in Congress for 2 different terms separated.
Yeah, under Andrew Jackson.
Yes. And then the Alamo takes place. Well, the Alamo's last stand takes place in 1836. So that's 22 years. And it doesn't really seem like 22 years when you're watching this movie.
No, he didn't change a bit, did he?
He got a little bit of gray hairs, and that's pretty much it. Yeah. So I mean, I thought it was educational a little bit for the Congress part, but I thought the Congress part was a little boring at first. But his final speech in Congress, I thought was very well done. I thought that was probably his best acting in the whole movie.
I would agree with that. But did you notice that, like, of the 3 sections, by far there was the least amount of time devoted to that? Like,
Yeah, because
we
I mean,
were almost, because it's 92 minutes, so you figure, okay, about a half hour for each movie. We were like, I don't know, maybe it was at least 35, 36 minutes in, and they still hadn't done the Congress part yet. And I was like, am I crazy? Like, when is that coming up? And then it's only there for maybe not even 20 minutes, I would say.
yeah, but I mean, it's probably the least interesting part.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, and the, but I think, one of the, I think the Congress part starts earlier to when he gets into Congress, when he kind of moves into that new town, when the Congress part starts.
Yeah,
Even before he gets to Congress, because I kind of feel like that was the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, I couldn't quite figure out where the first episode ended and the second one began. It's pretty clear where the third one or the second one and the third one separate.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first two, I wasn't quite sure when that one started.
Yeah, I think the fight, his brawl with what's his name, Bigfoot Mason, was the character's name. I think that was part of the Congress one. So I think it was a little bit earlier, because I kind of feel like that was the setting up of, hey, he's cleaning up this town, and then those people are going to be like, hey, we think you should be part of Congress.
I mean, I guess that would make sense, because since the second part is so dry, it would make sense to kind of at least start it with some sort of exciting, action sequence before we get to the actual like Congress stuff. So I could see that. I guess that makes sense.
So one of my big problems with this is that it definitely looks like a TV show. It definitely looks like an edited TV show. It doesn't look polished like a film. I listened to one of your reviews of a TV show the other day that you reviewed, and you were like, hey, this looks like a feature film, and it's a TV
yeah, that
show. But this is a movie that's a feature film that definitely looks like a TV show.
Yeah, I mean, you have to figure they probably put a little more budget into it than a lot of shows at the time, because it was on the Disneyland show, which was one of the most popular shows on TV. But still, yeah, I mean, when we take a look at some of the recent, period pieces or whatever that Disney has done, looks wise, this definitely is a huge step down.
Yeah, I mean, we just reviewed 20,000 Leagues on the Sea, which looks amazing, and go from there to this. I mean, if you compare this to maybe Treasure Island, then maybe the film quality is about the same.
Yeah,
but the quality
from 5 years earlier.
The quality is bad, but it's
how about the costumes?
The costumes are okay, but the one part of the quality is when they show footage of animals, it's so bad. Like, there's shots of the alligator in the river, and just like it's a quick shot, and Davy Crockett's walking in the water, and you might think that he's going to get attacked by an alligator. And there's an alligator swims real quick. But it's so jarring to see, like, it's really bad. And it was like,
well, what's funny is with all the nature documentaries they've done, you'd think they could have culled a frame or two from one of those. There's got to be some alligator footage at the Disney studio.
I don't know, but out of all of them, so there's the alligator footage, there's bears in the river, there's buffalo stampede, but then there's a shot of a prairie dog, which I felt was a little bit better quality than the rest. And I feel like they took it from the last the desert one that we just had.
The
Living Desert.
The Dying Desert, or whatever it was called. Yeah. Or the Vanishing Prairie.
It was the Living Prairie, or the Vanishing Prairie.
That's the Prairie, yeah. Yeah, you could be right on that. I
thought it was just
shocked.
I thought it was just a tad better. I'm like, they probably took it from the documentary.
Yeah, I don't know why they couldn't have done that with some of the others, especially the buffalo. We saw buffalo in the Vanishing Prairie too.
But they didn't have any stampedes, I guess. That guy in the buffalo shot didn't get any buffalo stampedes.
I suppose that's true. I definitely thought the costumes were sort of cheesy. That was part of and maybe because some of the recent ones we've done, like the Sword in the Rose, like the costumes are great. And here, I mean, I guess I get it. You're mostly wearing, kind of Wild West rags anyway. But um, I don't know. I felt like the costumes were just very poorly designed, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like they probably had like they weren't film quality. They were definitely TV quality.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like it's not that they were bad necessarily, but like it spoke to me way more as this is a TV show rather than a film.
Yeah.
Um. So
Um.
yeah, how
So
about Fess Parker though?
So I thought Fess Parker did a decent job as Davy Jones. Especially during his final
David
speech
Crockett.
in Congress. Actually, all of his speeches were good, but the final one was definitely the best one. I feel like those were the best parts of his acting. He's a little stiff in other dramatic scenes, especially when he hears of his wife's fate in the movie. I feel like that was really bad. It
Well,
wasn't
that whole
bad,
scene.
but I just felt like he just showed no emotion, and maybe that was kind of like the kind of going on the mythos of Davy Crockett. But I thought that he should have a little bit more emotion than he showed.
That was the one part that I really kind of wish I had a little more time to go and watch the original, because I feel like we had to miss something there. Like they had to maybe flesh things out a little bit more there, because it's like you said, there's almost no emotion from him, and then the wife and children are just never spoken of again. They basically don't exist anymore. I feel like there had to be something in the miniseries that was cut out for the movie, maybe because it was a little slow or something, but that gave us a little more exposition on that.
Yeah, I felt like that was lacking. And like the action's okay, but I did think there's two big fight scenes besides the whole battle at Alamo. There's one with the Indian leader of the Creek Army. His name in the movie is called Red Stick. And then there's another brawl with Bigfoot Mason before the Congress part. I thought they were just a little long. They were a little bit too choreographed. And then
Yeah.
sometimes it was just like no choreograph at all, and they were just kind of like wrestling on the ground. It just
Well, and I think your issue there speaks to the whole thing of like cutting part of it out to make it a movie. So in Walt's mind, he's probably like, well, the action sequences are the most exciting part. Let's really showcase them. So to us, it kind of seems like overkill, because we're like, well, so much of this portion of the movie is action, but really they've probably cut out 20 minutes around the action where it was just dialogue or exposition or something, character
maybe.
development that we just don't get to see.
Yeah. And then another action scene is there's a horse chase scene right before they get to the Alamo, and then that just goes on forever.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
long.
I mean, if they cut it in half, it would be fine. But you're like, okay, they're getting some good horse chase scene here, but it goes on for way too long.
Well, the Alamo portion is almost all action.
Yes.
Between the horse chase and then, of course, the Alamo battle itself. I mean, it's almost all action. So, which is another reason why the whole Congress thing in the middle is so stiff, because it's like, a bunch of action, all drama, and then all action.
Well, you do get a song in the Alamo section.
Oh,
Farewell to the Mountains.
Yeah, all right. You do get the song. That was maybe my least favorite part of the movie. I am up for a song anytime. I liked what's his face, not Martin Sheen. What the heck's the other guy's name? Kirk Douglas doing the song at the shanty in 20,000 Leagues, and the Davy Crockett King of the Wild Frontier song is okay. I think it's a bit too repetitive here. But this song at the end, I just hated. I really thought it was terrible.
It was definitely slow. I thought Fess Parker did a good job singing it, but I did think it was very slow and a little too melancholy, but I mean it fit the perfect time, like the emotion of the scene, because they were very down at that part. So I don't think
Yeah.
you're gonna be singing a fun sea shanty at that point.
No, I guess not.
But I mean, the Ballad of Davy Crockett was definitely the better song. Like you did say, it was used. It's used a lot. And
A lot.
I think they used it a lot is because it's an edited version of the TV shows. So I think they had to use it to move the story along. And
I was wondering that. I was wondering if maybe they made up a couple of new verses for the movie to sort of just explain things that they cut out of the miniseries.
that's what I think they had to do that, and like
Yeah.
to show some of the years passing as well. Sometimes I felt like they just kind of threw the Davy Crockett song in there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what Wikipedia says when they list all the Disney movies in the notes thing is compilation film mostly made up from pre-existing footage. So obviously all the stuff we see is pretty much from the miniseries. So when they say mostly made up, I think okay, they probably wrote some new verses of the song to add in.
Okay.
I couldn't find anything definitively on that, but that was my thought.
So the Ballad of Davy Crockett was a big hit.
Huge hit.
Did you read that at one point 3 different versions were in the top 10 at the same time?
Yes, and that is number one, insane.
Yeah.
Number two, so this was the early 1955. 1955 in like the summertime, the fall is when Elvis broke and when Bill Haley and the Comets, Hail Hail Rock and Roll and all that stuff. So like clearly America was really needing some fresh energy if 3 versions of the same song was in the top 10 right before that.
Yeah.
Like that's a little much, but yes, the version we hear in the movie was the number 1 hit, and then the other 2 were just in the top 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is like insane. That's certainly never happened since. But yeah. Also the whole like I think I liked Fess Parker's performance more than you, but also I liked his camaraderie with Buddy Ebsen.
But that was the thing. I think Buddy Ebsen basically steals the movie. Anytime he's on it, it's just I feel like he has great chemistry with Fess Parker, and then he brings a lot of humor and heart to the role. For such a minor role, he definitely brings a lot to it.
Well, I don't know, how familiar you are with him, but he is the star of Beverly Hillbillies. So obviously, I don't know, maybe 8 years or whatever after this aired. Yeah, I mean, the guy's a talent and he obviously was very funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would agree. He probably upstages Parker in a lot of the scenes.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like I disliked Fess Parker's performance. I needed a little bit more from him.
Well, what's funny is like at the time, Fess Parker was like after this role, and later on, I guess he got Daniel Boone too. But he became this sort of larger than life. Like Davy Crockett is Fess Parker. Nobody else, can ever play him. And it made me think like along the lines of maybe like Robert Downey Jr. right now with Iron Man. It's like, we can't, or Hugh Jackman with Wolverine. Like we can't think of anybody else in that role. It's so iconic to this person. And that really was at the time, like that was the deal with Fess Parker. People just thought he was the greatest thing. Nobody can ever touch Davy Crockett, but Fess Parker. Yeah, he was okay, but is he Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man? I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I didn't think so either.
So the only other thing I have written down here was about Native American stereotypes.
Okay, yeah, I have one thing written about them. They started, by the way, I'm sure you know this, but for our audience, they finally started on Disney Plus putting the disclaimers up for inappropriate topics and scenes and depictions.
Well, they had a little bit before certain movies, like it was just like a low description, but now there's like I don't know, it's 15 seconds where it's like this text comes up and it's like, hey, this has bad stereotypes that were inappropriate then are still appropriate now. But
because I don't think Peter Pan, when Joe and I watched Peter Pan, I don't think it had one.
No, it didn't have something like this.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, Peter Pan's known for its sort of inhumane depiction of Indians.
So I'm glad they're doing that.
Yeah.
I didn't think this was nearly as bad as Peter Pan.
No, me neither. I really did. In fact, one of the things I wrote about it is that I thought it was Crockett is a little bit forward thinking in the one scene where he's like, you know, I mean, he calls them Injuns, but you know, Injuns have the same rights as anybody, and you know, da 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 da. I thought that was for the 50s and really the
like
16 or 1860s, you know, whatever, 1830s.
Yeah, they definitely use like terms like savages, red man, redskins, but I didn't really see that as out of place because I feel like in that time period they probably would have used those phrases.
Yeah, I mean, this is certainly a period piece,
Yes.
even back then.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're right. I didn't really bristle at the language they were using necessarily, or even really, for the most part, the depiction.
Yeah, I did think he befriends a Native American, and they call him Busted Luck because he keeps falling off his. I thought he was a little stereotypical when he was first introduced, and then I thought they did give him a little bit of a character development. At one point, he outsmarts the gambler. His character's name's like Thimberling or Thimberrig or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Who's played by Hans Conrad and no, Conried. You know who that is?
No.
He was the voice of Captain Hook.
Oh, okay, very good.
Yeah.
So it all circles back to Peter Pan.
Yeah. But the Busted Luck was able to outsmart the gambler for some food, and then he also saves the gambler at one point. So I thought they gave him a little bit of a little bit of a hero moment for a second.
Yeah, I definitely think that the depictions here of the Native Americans is way better than we saw in certainly Peter Pan, but some other things as well. So yeah, I don't know why, because it seems like in the 50s it was the thing to do to, you know, kind of bash the Native Americans in that way, but yeah, this doesn't really do that.
I mean, they definitely did a little bit here and there, especially with some people's opinions of them. But I feel like the fact that I guess Davy Crockett, the real Davy Crockett, was a proponent for the rights of the Native Americans. So definitely comes out in his final speech at Congress.
Oh yeah,
he was a champion for them. So they had to, I guess, tone it back a little bit from Peter Pan. But I mean, some of it was still stereotypical.
It was, but like you said, this takes place in the early 1800s, whereas you know Peter Pan takes place, as far as we know, in 1950. So it might be a little bit worse for that. But yeah, I think we talked about pretty much everything I had here, other than, I mean, we sort of hit on this as we were talking about the plot, but I think as a whole the movie is just very disjointed, and if you didn't know it was from 3 TV episodes, I think you would be able to tell that like something is off narratively with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just
you wouldn't know what, but
the time frame just spans so much that like to have just the Creek War section as one episode, like doesn't seem that much. Have the Congress section doesn't seem like that much, and then the Alamo section doesn't seem like that much. But when you put them all together, you have 22 years, and you're just like, whoa, slow down a second. But,
yeah, no, I totally agree. All right, so in terms of the DVD stuff, like I said, I have this as part of the Walt Disney Treasures collection. So these were released in 9 different waves, I think every 3 or 4 months or something, for 2 or 3 years. And basically, I think all of the original Disney animated shorts are on this. Each person kind of gets their own little thing. But so wave one was a bunch of the Mickey Mouse in color shorts, Silly Symphonies, which is like the pre-Mickey stuff, and then a couple things about the TV show Disneyland and the theme park, and then Davy Crockett. This was part of the very first wave because I guess people had been clamoring for these on VHS or DVD, and they had never been released to the public. So this was, a big deal. It has, like I said, all 5 full episodes of the Disneyland show with the Davy Crockett movies. And this is still to this day the only place you can get them. And compared to some of the other Disney treasure collections, you can actually find this one fairly cheap on Amazon. Not cheap, but I mean, it's like $50 as opposed to some of them I've seen are like $200+, for some of the more rare ones. But they released it again in 2004 just as the 2 movies. So you can watch these movies before Disney Plus started, but again, it was the movie versions, not the full length uncut Disneyland shows. So maybe for the second one, so the second movie, since it's a little bit of a shorter movie and there's only 2 episodes, maybe I will watch both and just kind of compare and contrast a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Disney treasure things, if you can find them, I mean, cheap, they're very, very interesting. A lot of like for Disney, history buffs, it's sort of a treasure trove. But yeah, that's to this point the only place you can get the original uncut versions of the shows. So let's,
because it was such a hit. I mean, it caused the Crockett craze.
yeah, it's weird that they never re-released them. And it took so long for even the movies to come out on home media. It's very weird. I don't know why.
Yeah. The only other thing I had, I didn't even write this down, but I did read that Walt Disney said that had he known that it was going to be a craze, that he wouldn't have had the 3rd episode be the Alamo. Because I mean, spoiler alert, if you guys don't know what happened in Alamo, it doesn't really turn out that well.
No.
But he's like, had I known that, I wouldn't have made that the 3rd episode. That's why they made this movie to capitalize off that, and then that's why they did the 2 prequel ones that we're going to later. Because it was such a hit.
Yeah, you have to imagine. I guess they filmed all of these before they showed any of them, because obviously, I mean, it was right away a big hit. So if he hadn't filmed the 3rd yet, he could have sort of forced it. Maybe.
I imagine he filmed all these 3 first, and then it was such a hit that he filmed the later 2.
Yeah, and I would think my guess would be, and I don't know this for sure, but since it was like week 7 of the Disneyland show, I would imagine this has got to be one of the first original things they showed, because to this point it was a lot of like, oh, here's Snow White, everybody. He was just kind of re-showing a lot of his old movies, which makes sense. It's free, So I have to imagine this might have been one of the, if not the first, big movie original movie that they did. Oh, still to this day, by the way, I should point this out. So not only was it huge at the time, but still to this day, it's the most successful Disney television project. And I don't know if that's based on pure number of viewers alone, but I mean, when you think about all the big TV movie projects they've done, the High School Musicals, Halloween Town, all of the Disney Channel originals, through, some ABC Family stuff or whatever. But yeah, this still remains the most successful.
But that's just because of options these days. People have so many options these days.
Well,
that's 3 channels, and everybody tunes in on Sunday night to watch The Wonderful World of Disney.
That's true. I mean, you're not wrong, but keep in mind that in late 1954, not everybody had a TV either.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll go back to the Future for a second, where it was a big deal in November of '55 that they got their first set.
Yeah.
At Lorraine's house. So
TVs.
Yeah, I mean, nobody has 2 TVs.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, maybe they're also counting because it was released to theaters and made a ton of money in theaters too, and obviously
But
most, Disney project didn't do that, but
I
I
it.
know.
And I think you're right about this probably being the first original content for Disneyland, because we already talked about, wasn't the first one, I forget what we said was the first one. We already reviewed it. It was
Yeah, it
one of
was one of the ones we watched. I think it was one of the compilation ones.
I thought it was like,
No?
wasn't it Rob Roy or someone, or
Oh, maybe it
Sword
was.
Stone, or Sword in the Rose? It was one of those, not the best
Yeah.
one.
Let me.
One,
I'm trying to see if I
I
can
feel
look
like
it
it was
up.
one of the England ones.
I think you're right, though. Okay. Oh my God! Look, I found the whole first season, Tim. Okay, so number one is the Disneyland story, which is, I guess, how they're going to make the park. That's on one of the treasures that I have that I just talked about. So number two was Alice in Wonderland. Number three was the Vanishing Prairie.
Okay.
Number three was the Donald Duck story. I don't know what that means. I guess that means a compilation of Donald Duck shorts, and then they talked about the creation of him, maybe.
Maybe.
Then So Dear to My Heart.
Okay. I knew
There
that
it
was
is.
too.
That's probably the one we did. And then A Story of Dogs. Don't know what that is, but apparently it's on the DVD version of Lady and the Tramp. And then Operation Undersea. I mean, I guess these are original things, but they all to me seem like just like educational films or something like that. Like when I hear A Story of Dogs, I don't think doesn't seem like it's a new movie. And then Davy Crockett, so it was episode 8 of the show. And then Treasure Island came up as episode 11. So we've done a few of the ones lately, but yeah, wow. So I guess Alice in Wonderland was the first one that was actually a movie that they showed. But all right, and it even has a little legend for which segment it was. So it didn't actually go in rotation, because it did Fantasyland, then Adventureland, Fantasyland again, then Frontierland. So I guess it just sort of bounced back and forth.
Well, I imagine the stuff for Tomorrowland was a little bit harder to film and create and stuff like that. It's kind of like in the 50s, I feel like it was a little harder to think of stuff to do like that was futuristic.
Yeah, that's probably true. It looks like the first episode of Tomorrowland was Man in Space in March of '55, which apparently was released in theaters with the second Davy Crockett movie. But it was nominated for Academy Award for Best Documentary Short. So, all right. And it is available on one of the Walt Disney Treasures, the Tomorrowland Treasure. Tim, if we have time in this lifetime to look at all the Walt Disney treasures, holy cow, we'll be here another 100 years. But all right, so that's Davy Crockett and the King of the Wild Frontier. So next time, like I said, I'll be here with Joe doing Lady and the Tramp. But then Tim and I will have a few more before we get to the next Davy Crockett one. And we'll do the African Lion. That's one of the ones that is on Disney Plus, I believe.
That is, yeah.
So that'll be.
I believe it, what the White Wilderness, whatever that one is.
The last, I think it's the last one. White Wilderness, 58. That's the last one I think that they did. But all right, we'll try and track that down. Maybe I have it on a treasures collection, Tim. That's how we watched Victory Through Air Power, isn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. All right.
Grades? Are we gonna do grades?
Oh, I guess we got to do grades. Sometimes, Tim, I get so involved in the conversation, I forget the grades. Thank you. Yes, let's do grades. To me, as a full-length feature film, this one is not among the best. I'm thinking like in the B- type of range.
Yeah, I would give it a B-. I mean, that's based off the curve of historical importance and things that they were doing. The fact that it was like the first movie to make a television show into a movie and capitalize off that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It caused a huge craze. I feel like it's important for historical reasons. Entertainment purposes, if you showed this to a kid these days, I think they would be bored. But for for people like us who enjoy movies and Disney history, I feel like this is a B minus.
And I think kids at the time probably loved it.
Oh yeah, they ate it up with the spoon.
Ate it up, obviously, as showcased by the merchandising. But yeah, I think B minus is probably pretty fair for this. The next one, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I mean, they had a little bit more time to.
That's true.
To make it, so maybe a little bit more production went into it, and they knew it was going to be a hit. So maybe more thought went into making those 2 episodes and how they could make it into a feature-length movie as well. But
yeah, it's probably almost the entire episodes. I know it's a little shorter than this one. I think it's an hour and like 20 or 21. But still, I think they probably only cut maybe a few minutes from each, whereas this one they cut easily 10 to 15 minutes from each episode.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Tim, thank you for joining as always.
No problem.
We'll see everybody next time. Bye.